See, I don't really like opening up to people about my secret project, but I've about my graphic novel that I started. It came to me back in 2003. It's been like a work in progress in the pipeline, and it all started on Halloween night. I uh, I was on the kitchen table after trick or treating, and afterwards I started drawing, doodling sort of triangular. It's some weird Halloween monster, but then later that became the basis for the main antagonist for it. And shortly after, I I did the main hero. I designed him, I drew him. But over the years, I evolved the story because uh, the criticism, the feedback I got from my people around me, sort of friends, I took that as a means, to improving the story and changing it up a bit, not keeping it too dark, but making it a certain level of adding a certain level of darkness and maturity that the story needed. And afterwards, I just kept all the drawings and concept art for many of the characters in the story. I kept them hidden away in some journals, some of my older classwork notebooks. I kept them stored in there secretly because I don't know, I had some sort of small small embarrassment of people finding out my drawings. And but then I grew out of that and showed maybe one or two person ever, two people that I'd never seen again. I showed them what my idea was for a story, and they were blown away absolutely by it. They told me you should totally get that published. But deep down, I knew that I still had a long way to go before I could get this uh, piece of work in the pipeline. Pretty much, you have to revise the story, and you have to structure all of it. Make sure you know the basis for it, the plot, the characters, the setting, and all that. It's a very deep and complicated, sort of, not really complicated, it's a very complex process when you're writing a story. And also sort of why I haven't been that's why I haven't came around to finishing it up. But also because I've been doing when when that's sort of a childhood thing, something in your youth, you've you kind of push it aside when you're growing up and going to school and getting a job and all that stuff. So that also has a part, why I haven't gotten around to coming back to this and working on it. When asked, if what my story was going to be about, I'm very careful, in certain plot points that I give away out loud, as fear of people taking my ideas or robbing them from me, and sort of copying them, stealing them from me. So I'm very, this is sort of, it's my baby, because I like making sure that everything is kept like sealed tight shut in a suitcase, because I like keeping everything close to the chest. Any idea, I keep it, I don't say it out loud, I write it down in a journal, like any plot points that I'm going to need for later to save, to use in a plot, whatever. I'm very careful with what information I disclose onto people. Like if they ask me what's it about, I tell them it's like an sort of an adventure, genre defining, story adventure. Originally I envisioned it as when I was a youngster, young lad, I originally thought it was going to be just a one shot, just write it out, the story and all that. But then over the years, as I was growing up, I thought, just making it into one book, then maybe make a sequel, at least three, because the story, because I can't restrict all this just to one installment. I had to expand the story upon maybe two or third at least. And then I thought maybe we can go a little bigger. Maybe there's some other parts of the story that we haven't yet told. But mostly the main goal was to tell the story as it needed to be, to make sure the whole story is told as it needs to be, whether there has to be two or three or four or five sequels. Make sure all of it comes out. That's pretty much what I'm trying to formulate. About the plot, what I can what I can tell you guys about so far was that it's sort of about a young protagonist. As usual, there's always a young adult in the main stories. Uh, he's sort of tormented by a creature in his nightmares, and meanwhile, there's another character doing his own journey, and he has some ambitions he wants to achieve. And later on, those two main characters' stories intertwine, sort of conflict each other. Surely both go head to head, but that's also not the main point of the story. So yeah, that's sort of like a vague description of my story, synopsis, whatever you want to call it. And I'm still revising many plot points and things, so I don't know, probably in the future that might change what I've just relayed upon you guys. I have to make sure this is 100% of the way, the vision that I want, because I'm very passionate about this. So that's all I'm gonna tell you guys for now. Thank you for watching me ramble on about my my project, whatever. Right.